But have you heard about Three-Eye Atlas?
The what?
Three-Eye Atlas,
Say again?
the asteroid or comet they said that's heading towards Earth.
A comet? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Or an
it's been
asteroid?
in the last couple of weeks.
No, I haven't heard one recently. Usually these things, they don't they can't predict accurately exactly that what the path is until it gets closer. So
Yeah,
there's an error range that says, well, Earth is within the error bar of what we know where it might happen, but then usually as they get closer, the chances are very, very strong that it's going to miss. So that's just likely what will happen.
Exclusive interviews, global voices, real stories.
so today we're with Ward Sanford, and he has a 35-year career with being a novelist. But before we begin, what are your thoughts on the recent news with the church shooting in Michigan?
Well, what's really curious is my last name is Sanford,
Oh, okay.
the
Word
same
Sanford.
same as this shooter, although absolutely no relation. So, in
Yeah.
fact, the name Thomas Sanford it was my immigrant ancestor 400 years ago.
Oh, okay.
It's a
So
very sad situation our country is in at the moment with all
I
this
know
violence.
it's all been, yeah, just in September alone. So you've had a 35-year career. How did your scientific background shape the way you research and write historical?
So, yeah, I have worked for the U.S. Geological Survey as a scientist for almost 40 years. I was a hydrologist working with underground water and aquifers, water supply, contamination issues. So as a scientist, I'm very much into detail and researching and getting things correct. So when I began doing background research for this novel series, I wanted to get all the historical details, correct as I put this whole series together and the plots and the locations and the people, trying to use as many real events and people in the series as possible.
Okay. So what inspired you to focus on first century Judea and Flavius Josephus for Cry for Jerusalem series?
So, right, I've always been interested in Jerusalem. I had visited there, and when I started going around seeing the different sites and locations, and people's explanations and trying to understand, for example, where the temple was in the first century. Everybody wanted, especially to quote this author named Flavius Josephus.
Yeah.
And he was a historian, and many people have heard of him. He was a historian at the time, but I didn't know much more about him. But everybody either quoted him in support of their theory, or if they didn't like what he said, they just kind of dismiss him. So I decided I wanted to read his works for myself.
Yeah.
But if you go and get the book, basically that's called The Works of Josephus, it's a very large uh, volume of history that reads quite densely like a history book, difficult to
Yeah.
read. But I found a more modern translation, English translation, more recently by Bob Beasley, and that was on the Jewish Wars, just one of the books he wrote. And that book concerned the first century, basically from the time of King Herod or a little before up through the fall of Jerusalem. And that was much more readable. So in reading that, I discovered just an incredible amount of detail. And I discovered, well, not only was Josephus a historian, but he was involved very much in all of the events in those final years leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem.
Okay.
And could just describe an incredible amount of detail, everything that happened, and almost exactly how it happened. Um, and so upon reading this, I was like, wow, how come I've never heard any of these incredible stories before? But I realized that people just aren't going to pick up Josephus off the shelf and be able to read it very easily.
Yeah.
So then it occurs to me, if this was all put into novel form, it would be much more readable by the general audience. So that was the inspiration for putting his works into a series of what turned out to be 4 novels.
Okay. So as a Christian counselor, how do your experiences with people's struggles influence the characters and moral tensions in your novels?
Yeah, I've only been doing Christian counseling maybe the last 10 or 15 years, but it certainly gives you an insight into our behaviors and why we behave. So when you're putting together plot lines and interactions with characters, certainly that feeds into what characters might be doing, what they might be saying, those sort of things, right?
Yeah. So Josephus is a controversial figure, seen as both a traitor and a vital witness, as you just said. From your perspective, which side do you see him on?
Oh, right. As you say, Josephus has also been considered a traitor to the Jews. In fact, for centuries after the events, it was forbidden even to translate his works from Greek into Hebrew, for example.
Yeah.
And so how this came about was, so Josephus was an upper class Jew in Jerusalem, living in Jerusalem. So he interacted very much with the Pharisees and all of the leaders. And he was very educated. So, for example, he was fluent in Latin and Greek, as well as Hebrew and Aramaic.
Yeah.
At one point, he was sent to Rome on a mission. So he had been to Rome. He had interacted with the Romans directly. So he was a huge asset from that point of view. And when the rebellion started, his first job, he was assigned to help defend Galilee from the Romans. So at this point, the Romans, under the leader of General Vespasian, was coming onto Judea with 4 different legions, and they started by attacking the north and going around Judea to try to suppress all the rebellion in the countryside first. So Josephus was put in charge of defending of Galilee there, and he was in a small fortress city that was put under siege, and he was captured by the Romans.
Yeah.
And instead of killing him, they actually saw in him possibilities of learning things about the Jews in Jerusalem, because he was, as I said, very educated, was fluent in Latin, and so they kept him around. And in fact, what he did to sort of save himself, perhaps, was he was describing this vision he had of Vespasian, and saying that that Vespasian would someday be ruler of the whole world. He would be emperor. And Vespasian said, well, that sounds a bit crazy, because there's several other politicians in Rome that would take that job first, and I'm not really even interested in the job. But
Yeah.
that was interesting. And then it turns out a couple years later, Vespasian does end up becoming emperor. So suddenly the Romans are seeing Josephus in a much better light. They actually free him, but he decides he's going to stay there with the Romans. He didn't go back to Jerusalem. He stayed with the Romans. And he saw himself as sort of a self-appointed liaison to the Romans to help negotiate. And he wanted to negotiate in a way that would, with the Jews, to get the Jews to surrender, so that the Romans would not destroy the city and the temple. But of course, that failed, and the city was destroyed. The temple was destroyed in 70 AD. So what does this make Josephus look like? It looks like he's over there with the Romans, giving them away the secrets of Jerusalem, and ending up on the winning side, the wrong side. And so from the Jews' point of view, he's he is a traitor. But he goes, and
Yeah.
then it doesn't make it him look any better. The fact after that he went to Rome and actually was living in an apartment set up by the emperors. But in that point, he wrote all of this history of the Jews. His main books, the Antiquities, which follow the Old Testament, and the War of the Jews, which was the time of the New Testament. And without him, all of that history would never have been recorded. So he was
Yeah.
he saw himself as still as very faithful to the Jewish people and trying to preserve their history, but the circumstances just never looked good for him from that viewpoint of what had happened.
Okay, so many may not realize then the spiritual and political chaos in the first century Judea. How does understanding that context deepen our grasp of the early Christian movement?
Right. So I really wrote this book not as a viewpoint of coming from the Christians or the Jews or the Romans, but more of a neutral viewpoint that would also include discussions of these new Christians and interactions with some of them, but the Christians were not like the main characters, but the idea was support the historical underpinning of Jesus and the early church, that, it really was there and very much part of everything going on.
Yeah.
Right. So it would really be crazy
So
to write a novel like this and
are there
not
parallels
include,
between the society's pressure of that time and what's going on right now in America as well? Do you think there's a parallel currently?
well, history tends to repeat itself, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it really being a parallel. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, Israel is back in existence today, and they're still fighting, right? There's still wars and rumors of wars, and yeah, unfortunately, sometimes people see the title of the series, which is "Cry for Jerusalem," and immediately our current context comes to mind, which is
Yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah.
what's going on, and then I get hate mail saying, "Why don't you cry for the Palestinians instead of Jerusalem?" And of course, this is nothing about what the series is about. The series is about the first
Yeah.
century, and this series was written before the war even came up. So the timing on that has not necessarily uh, uh, helped get this series seen, um, at least from those who may have already have had ideas of what they see and going on over there.
So what do you want viewers to take away from the series?
Wow, well, I just love historical novels. I guess I started appreciating historical novels. I read a couple of Ken Follett's books. He's a famous writer who the ones I wrote were about World War I and World War II, and just
Yeah.
learning history while you're reading very exciting, dramatic stories about real people. So uh, I hope people will be able to appreciate and want to read the books just because they are very dramatic and we follow characters. There's a lot of character development, and you start caring a lot for these characters. So that really helps people engage in the story and want to read the story. But while they're reading it, we're learning history at the same time. So they'll see things
Yeah.
about who the emperors and what was going on. You can just learn a lot of history through historical novels.
So how do you handle the tension between presenting historical figures faithfully and crafting engaging, emotionally rich characters?
Right. So most of our characters were real characters, the real people that were involved at the time. For example, the antagonist, sort of the bad guy, was the procurator for Judea at the time. His name was Gessius Florus. He
Yeah.
had basically come directly with orders from Nero to try to extract more money from the Jews, and he wanted to try to um, go to the temple and steal money from the temple treasuries. So that's an example. He and others, of course, one of the main characters in the story is Josephus himself, and most of the Romans and other Jews he's interacting with, he actually mentions in his story. So the idea is to combine real people, but then sometimes in order to fill out the plots, you add some additional characters. So for example, another main character is a Roman named Nicanor, but
Yeah.
but Josephus actually mentions him in briefly a couple of times in his writing. So there are a couple of characters like this that we build out into full
Okay.
characters that are simply
So
mentioned
are there
briefly.
any ways your scientific training informs your approach to dealing with um, your novel writing from a spiritual aspect and from a technical aspect?
Well, so what really it is that there's two very different forms of writing. So I've spent my career doing writing for scientific journals where all you do is present the facts with some interpretation. And, novel writing is completely different. And I recognized this right up front and decided I wasn't going to be able to do this justice. So I actually hired a professional writer to help me write in that style, right? So, but, I was able to have a lot of discussions weekly with my writer in terms of where the plot lines were going, how how to weave in uh, some Christian content, the spiritual aspects of it. So we had very good relationship in terms of doing that.
Okay. So how can readers best engage with your work, blogs, and teachings to deepen their understanding of your projects?
So I have a website called cryforjerusalem.com, and there you will see you can click and read about some of the history. As you mentioned, I have a whole blog series. I've written dozens of blogs about different historical aspects of this time period, geographical aspects, some apologetic issues that I sort of uncovered along the way, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of that under the blogs. The series themselves are all on Amazon as paperback or as Kindle or as audio and audiobooks on Audible. So I hired a British voice actor. He does all of the narrating and the audiobooks. A lot of people that listen to podcasts like to listen to books too, so they are on Audible.
Okay. What lasting impact do you hope your novels have on readers or people interested in history?
Yeah, I hope people that are interested in history will read it and become interested in the religious history that was happening at the time. The other thing that's going on right now is I'm working with a producer from Hollywood. We're trying to generate interest in having this become a streaming series on one of the streaming
Yeah.
channels like uh, Netflix or Amazon, Apple TV. We actually
Okay.
have two directors in Israel who are interested in working with the project, but we have to get somebody who's willing to fund it. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at with that.
Hopefully that goes through, God willing.
Yes. So
Yes.
it's a little uphill climb. It's very expensive, but having a book series that already exists helps to sell this sort of idea to the to the main producers. So
Yeah. So, are there any lasting words you want to leave our viewers or advice for other upcoming writers out there?
coming writers, well, yeah, writing a novel is a big challenge. It will take some practice. All the power to you, and all the best with your efforts. But you have to believe in yourself. Even as I'm working on these, I can get discouraged. It's like, wow, this is such a big project. Is this ever going to happen? Is this ever going to come to fruition? You just kind of have to have
That's a
discussions
natural thing.
with the Lord about Him seeing you through the whole procedure and
Yeah.
believing that He is working through you.
Okay. So thanks for coming on and telling us your story and how you developed your project, Cry for Jerusalem.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes,
Yes.
all the best.
So when this comes out, yeah, we'll send it out and tag you and everything, so you'll know when it's out. We'll probably
Right.
be in a couple of weeks.
They're available on the international Amazon sites as well.
Yeah.
So people in Canada can buy it through Amazon and people in Europe and places.
Okay. All right. That's good to know for everyone watching. Thanks again for the interview.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.